When it comes to designing and implementing REST APIs, representational state transfer, there are several best practices that can help ensure consistency, reliability, and ease of use. Here are some key best practices to consider. Use descriptive and meaningful resource URIs. URIs should represent resources, not actions. They should be intuitive and provide information about the resource being accessed. For example, /users is a more appropriate URI for accessing a collection of users rather than something like /getUsers. Use HTTP methods properly. REST APIs should leverage the appropriate HTTP methods for each action. Use get for retrieving resources, post for creating resources, put for updating resources, and delete for removing resources. This helps maintain the idempotence and safety of the operations. Version your API. Include a version number in your API URI to allow for future updates and backward compatibility. For example, /v1/users can represent the first version of the user's resource. Use appropriate HTTP status codes. Use standard HTTP status codes to provide meaningful responses to API requests. For example, 200 OK for successful requests, 201 created for successful resource creation, 400 bad requests for invalid requests, and 404 not found for non-existent resources. Use consistent naming conventions. Maintain consistent naming conventions for resources, endpoints, query parameters, and response formats. This helps make the API more intuitive and easier to use. Implement pagination and filtering. For resources that can potentially have a large number of entries, implement pagination to retrieve results in smaller, manageable chunks. Additionally, provide filtering options to allow clients to request specific subsets of data. Use authentication and authorization. Implement secure authentication and authorization mechanisms to protect your API from unauthorized access. Consider using standards like OAuth 2.0 or JWT, JSON Web Tokens, for authentication and authorization. Provide comprehensive documentation. Document your API thoroughly, including the available endpoints, expected request formats, response formats, authentication requirements, and examples. Good documentation is crucial for developers who will be using your API. Handle errors gracefully. Design your API to handle errors gracefully by providing meaningful error messages and appropriate HTTP status codes. This helps developers understand and troubleshoot issues effectively. Use HDOAs, hypermedia as the engine of application state. Consider incorporating HDOAs principles by including hyperlinks in your API responses. This allows clients to navigate through the API and discover available actions dynamically. These are some general best practices for designing REST APIs. It's important to consider the specific requirements of your application and the needs of your API consumers to ensure a well-designed and robust API.